Hello everyone, what's up? In this Star Wars Legion painting tutorial, I'll show you how I painted and weathered this TX-130 Saber class tank. More specifically, I will cover the process in 5 parts. Part 1, Undercoating. Part 2, Basecoat. Part 3, Needle Chipping. Part 4, Pin Wash. And Part 5, Post-Shading, Streaking and Pigments. Towards the end, I will also share my conclusions about this build and the model itself. This video is divided into chapters, so you can more easily review particular techniques if you like. Let's get started, shall we? If you've seen my ATST or TX-225 videos, this step will be very familiar. Instead of a primer, I'm undercoating the model with a 50-50 mix of Tamiya Hull Red and Flat Black, which I'm then thinning around 50% with Tamiya Lacquer thinner. As you can see, I start by spraying a very thin mist, and I keep the airbrush constantly in motion. This will ensure that this very first layer is really thin, which improves paint adhesion. After that initial thin layer is done, I will move to the next section and then the next, slowly but gradually building up opacity. Although these paints are alcohol-based acrylics, not water-based by the way, the addition of the lacquer thinner makes them lacquer-like in their spraying characteristics. This avoids having to spray a primer and then a rust undercoat, and it also makes the experience much more enjoyable. What do I mean by that? Well, there is no dry tip whatsoever, even if I depress the trigger continuously, and at the same time, the paint will dry super quickly on the model itself. So here's the model undercoated. Before applying the base coat, I use my Badger Patriot Xtreme with a 0.3mm needle to spray chipping fluid on all surface details and along the innumerable panel lines which this vehicle features. Normally I would have sprayed the entire model quite liberally, but this time I wanted to try something different. Instead of applying chipping to the entire model, and doing so by using a brush, I wanted to concentrate on panel lines, and I wanted to use a needle instead, like I had done with the Dwarf Spider Droid. But more on that later. For the base coat itself, I mixed flat white and sky gray in equal parts, and combined these with AK thinner, which is not as user-friendly as Tamiya lacquer thinner, but allows the paints to react with chipping fluid. Now, if you have seen my ATST and TX-225 videos, you may recall that I had a great time spraying the base coat with those. Not so this time, I must say. Achieving full opacity took me forever, and I had to clean the tip several times. The difference, once again, was in the thinner. Is that worth it in order to apply chipping fluid, rather than liquid mask as I did with those other projects? Well, that will depend on the model and on the effect that you're looking for. Having achieved a completely opaque finish, I applied some highlights by adding some more white to my paint cup and then some more thinner. Finally, the real fun starts. Before taking the model under the needle, as it were, I applied a liberal amount of water to the area to be chipped. As you can see though, I'm concentrating on panel lines and surface details. Then I took an old airbrush needle out and used its tip to create chipping along the edge of that panel. As you can see, it's possible to create really fine chips, and under close scrutiny, it's very easy to spot the difference between these and any chips that have been painted on by hand. Then I went along panel lines and used the tip again, but this time to inscribe or carve along panel lines. Rivets and other raised details were my next victims. Now, other than on the Dwarf Spider Droid, I had never done something like this before, and by this stage I was having a lot of fun. This made me wonder if I would ever use a brush again, for chipping purposes that is. The next bit is what I enjoyed the most. I used the flat of the needle, so to speak, applying light friction along that edge. Yes, I really had to show you this on slow motion. Look at that. As silly as this may sound, this was perhaps my proudest moment to date as a modeler. Using a needle as opposed to a brush will also allow you to create chipping along 2 or more parallel edges. Check this out. It's also easy to leave spaces between chips or to create very fine chipping if you like. Another area that was a lot of fun was the cupola. The number of concentric circles and different edges on that was just crazy. Applying this little spin on the well-known hairspray chipping technique took me about an hour for the entire tank. While that is quite a lot, I will admit, it was well worth it. So get a sharp implement of your own and give this a try. Since I had run out of my beloved Ammo Black Wash, I decided to try something new. The Black Knight Panel Line Wash, also by Ammo of MIG. The results seemed okay at first, but soon I had to switch to a bigger liner brush in order to get the desired effect. Not only that, but I had to use a lot more product than I normally would. Left without any other black enamels, I decided to try Ammo Starship Streaking instead, which is a very dark green. But this isn't a regular enamel wash either, so knowing that the streaking enamels are much thicker, I added quite a bit of thinner. Initially this worked quite well, and I was happy to have made the change. However, when it came to blending, there were many spots where the excess wash was simply impossible to remove. This never happens to me with regular enamel washes, so lesson learned. I was happy to pick up the airbrush again and apply some streaking and post-shading with my usual mix of Tamiya LP1 and 80% lacquer thinner. Continuing with the previous disasters, or perhaps the gypsy curse that surely must have been placed on me during this project, I wasn't able to replicate the fine clean lines that I had achieved with the AAT battle tank. Now I was happy enough with the overall effect, but I knew I could have done much better. After that, applying the gunmetal pigments to the guns was of course very easy and quite enjoyable. The finish that you get this way, as opposed to dry brushing a metal color, is much more realistic. A small and stoppy makeup brush works great for this, by the way. Before I forget, if you're wondering about the red lenses, it was just some Tamiya clear red applied by brush. Nothing fancy. So anyway, what are my conclusions? Well, first of all, never to run out of black wash again. On a more serious note, it's important to recognize that sometimes things just won't go as planned, and the finish won't be what you expected. But remember, experiment, fail, learn, repeat. Some of those experiments will yield really good results, and in doing so, open up new possibilities for you. A good example for me in this project was the idea of combining chipping fluid with the use of a needle. This new process for me was super fun, and it allowed me to get results which, for me personally, would have been impossible otherwise. Regarding the model itself, I have to say that again, I highly recommend it. The rocket launcher was a little bit fiddly, but otherwise this kit is very easy to build, there is minimal cleanup involved, and as you can see, it has a lot of detail. As always, I would like to thank all my Patreons. Your support is very much appreciated, guys. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more hobby content. Thank you all, and remember, keep it up and weather it out.